Hi everybody, I'm Scott Munson, Superintendent of Schools in the Marshall Public School District. We appreciate you taking time to watch this episode of Tiger Talk Television, and today I have two special guests here who I'll ask to introduce themselves in a moment. We're going to talk about our English Learner Program in the Marshall Public Schools and share a bit of information about that. So Jeremy, if you'd talk to the audience a little bit about who you are, what you do, what your current role is, and your history in the district. And then Beth, if you'd do the same thing, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. My name is Jeremy Williams. I'm the Director of Teaching and Learning for Marshall Public Schools. This is my 18th year in the district and my first year in this role. I've worked at a few of the other buildings as principal at Westside Elementary, assistant principal at the high school, and I originally taught Spanish. So working with Beth Ritter this year in her new role as well.
And my name is Beth Ritter, and I'm the EL coordinator for the district. This is also my first year in this position. Before that, I spent 14 years at Westside, teaching 4th grade and then in the title program.
So Beth, you just said you're the EL coordinator. So just for everybody out there who, we know it every day, because we talk about it every day, so we know that EL stands for English Learner. There's other sort of acronyms, ESL for English as a Second Language, ELL for English Learner, Language Learner. We just kind of focus on English learners. Talk a little bit about the demographics of our English learner students in the district, maybe the numbers and sort of what we've seen over the years. Both of you can do that.
Sure.
You know, for our audience, because again, we work with our student population every day, every week, every year. We see the changes, we see the needs, but let's tell a little bit about that.
Sure. We have a number of students in our district who English isn't their first language, so we have some special services in place for those. The EL students come from a variety of different countries, and I'll let Beth talk a little bit about the population, what that looks like. But and students come from no English to start with to students that have been speaking English for a few years and just need a little extra boost to be up to where the rest of their peers are. So we have some different levels of services in place for those students.
Mm-hmm. And as of today, we are servicing 398 English learners in our district.
K through 12.
K through 12, yeah. Yep, 398 students, K through 12. And our three biggest populations for our EL students are our Hispanic students, our Karen students, and our Somali students.
So when we talk about roughly 400 EL students, and that's out of a population K-12 enrollment of about 2,500 students, just to put things into perspective. So an English learner student, how are they identified as English learner and needing a little bit of extra support? What's the process that, it's not just as simple as saying, well, you come to us from Somalia or somewhere else. There's sort of a process that we have to go through. Can one of you talk about that just briefly?
When parents register their students in the school, they identify what their primary language is at home, what they speak primarily at home, what the first language the student spoke was, and then the EL teachers see that if they identify a language other than English, there's a screener the students take that they could qualify for the services through that, depending on their level of English.
And that's where we talk about the different levels, and really the levels mean the level of support that they need, whether it's pretty intensive and more time extensive, or whether it's just a little bit of extra support in terms of just continuing to learn the English language.
Exactly.
So a day in the life of an EL student, and obviously we have different levels of service, but talk about some of the things that our EL students have the opportunity to participate in and the support that they get. What does that look like that's different than a student who's not an EL student?
Why don't you talk to that, Beth?
Yep, we really try for our EL students to immerse them in their regular classroom, to get them acclimated with the English language and to just, be around it all day, every day. But then we also offer different types of services in our district. We have a lot of pull-out services where they'll come out and work with the EL teacher in an EL classroom to get the type of service they need. We also have some push-in where the EL teacher might go in and assist, whether it be the regular classroom teacher, a content teacher, maybe at the middle or high school, or even a special ed teacher. It just, depends, and it varies case by case, student by student. So we offer lots of different types of services, but we really do try to immerse them in the English language, but then pull them out and give them the additional help and support that they need on a daily basis.
One of the other things we offer, we have some co-taught classes where there's the content teacher, especially at the high school, middle school level, a content teacher and an EL teacher together working with the students to get the language and the content at the same time.
So let's talk about those three different scenarios. We've got co-teaching that you mentioned, Jeremy, and then push in and pull out. So if I'm an EL student in a pull out scenario, what is happening with me? What are the supports, activities that I'm participating in to get that level of support that I need? What does that look like in the classroom?
We're really working to align the instruction that's happening in the classroom with the instruction that's happening in the interventions. So whatever topic the teacher is working on, when they come to the intervention, the EL classroom, they're working on the same things but providing more language supports for those kids. And then the other way around as well, we're working with classroom teachers on, it's called the SIOP method, Sheltered Instructional Observation Protocol, where it's learning some of those strategies to provide language supports that are good for all students in the classroom, but specifically geared for our English language learners.
So the pull out, me as an EL student, I spend some time in an EL classroom, not necessarily with my peers, although it doesn't have to be one-on-one, right? It can be small group, kind of focusing on the same learning, a parallel track, if you will, as what's taking place in the classroom. When we talk about push in, what's the difference between pull out and push in relative to the services that I'm receiving?
Yep, so the push-in services, the EL teacher is going in to the regular classroom and then assisting his or her EL students in that classroom, so the instruction's happening alongside the regular classroom teacher.
Okay, and then co-teaching, how's that different from push-in? What are the main differences in terms of, again, the supports that I'm receiving?
So in a co-taught classroom, both the content teacher and the EL teacher are leading the class. It's not just a small group, they're actually the classroom instructor for that program. Which
I would think would be really nice, because then you have two instructors, licensed staff members who can deliver the content, check for understanding, do all the things that we know good teachers do. Awesome. So we've talked about our teachers, specifically EL teachers, and we'll certainly talk about the regular classroom teachers. How many EL teachers do we have, and maybe tell us a little bit about what their day looks like. We've talked about three different things they might be doing, but let's talk numbers and then job duties for them.
Right now, K-12, we have 13 licensed EL staff members on staff that work with a variety of students, and depending at the level, it depends on the number. Their day is very busy, especially at the elementary level. They have groups coming and going about every, I would say, 30 to 40 minutes. So, the kids are coming throughout the day. So it's a very busy schedule. And then at the middle and high school, they follow their schedule, or the block schedule at the high school as in the middle school. So they have their students for a longer period of time, but are doing the same type of things that they're doing at the elementary level. It's just the elementary is shorter chunks, and it might be shorter chunks throughout the day.
And when we talk about 13 staff members, that's district-wide,
Yes.
so we have a number of them in each building, obviously
correct.
Sort of dependent on the number of EL students in that particular building.
could change from one year to the next depending on what the population of each site looks like.
Right, if say a 8th grade group of students that has a high EL population transitions into 9th grade, then we're going to look at maybe shifting some staffing to the high school from the middle school. So regular classroom teachers, English, math, social studies, science, Phi Ed, so on and so forth. What role do they play in helping our EL students? What are some of the things that they're doing to try to help those students relative to support and really getting a good understanding and ability to use the English language?
Right. We really work with all students all students are mastering the same content. They all have the same expectations when ultimately the goal is our diploma at the end, and it's the same diploma for all students. So the content area teacher, their focus is on teaching the content, and the EL teacher's focus is on helping with the language. So a lot of working together and strategies. Example might be using a sentence frame and helping just provide more language support for a student who struggles more with English, but we're focusing on the content through that.
You brought up a really good point, Jeremy, that I don't know if a lot of folks realize, and honestly, I didn't realize this until I started working with our EL program in my previous district, and that's continued here. The expectations that we have, just because a student comes to us with an EL background doesn't mean that we just say, well, they're not going to get to here.
Exactly.
So we're going to try to get them from here to here. We still have that expectation that we'll accelerate them to that level. Can you talk about that just briefly, maybe expand on it? Any thoughts that either one of you have really about that?
Right, we know that all students have the same learning progression, so we have to start with meeting them where they're at, but we also all have the same goal, so that means we have to accelerate that learning for our EL students who are coming behind with English. Depending on what grade level they are, they might be in a grade level where we're not teaching the phonics skills anymore, so we have to teach those at some other spot so they can still gain that English and it's career and college ready. When they leave Marshall High School, we want them career and college ready. We talk about inspiring every student every day. We do that by meeting them where they're at, by meeting their needs.
And with an EL student, because they have some catching up to do, we can't just say, we want you to make a year's progress during the fiscal or calendar
Exactly.
year. We want you to make more. That's why we're going to sort of tailor that instruction at your level. You talked about sometimes we bring phonics in, even though we don't teach phonics at that particular grade level or whatever.
Right.
So we have something, I don't think it's unique necessarily to our school district, but we have staff members who are called parent-student connectors. Would both of you talk a little bit about what they do, why they're important, and different things like that?
Yeah, our parent-student connectors play a huge role in our district. They're a great help to us. We have 2 Hispanic parent-student connectors. We have 1 Somali and 1 Karen parent-student connector. And they are native in their language, and they really help to serve their community and help bridge that gap, especially that language barrier. A lot of times if we have families that come and they don't speak any English, they're our help and our resource to get the information from home to school and back and forth. And they're just a huge support and a huge help in our district to help, like I said, bridge that gap between the families and school.
So an example could be at conference time. We want to communicate with the parents, and if our teacher doesn't speak Korean or Somali, we want to make sure we have somebody there to help make that connection. Or if we have a parent communication going home, we have these connectors that can help translate that for the parents. A lot of times it's not just translating the letter and sending it in the mail. A lot of times these parent-student connectors are working outside the regular school day, and they're knocking on doors and they're visiting community centers for that culture, for that group, and they're making that personal connection with parents, so they know what's going on or connected to the school.
So they don't do work necessarily inside the classroom. A lot of their work is really truly to connect the parents and students with our school system, the teachers, just what everything that's important really, that's difficult because of the language barrier and helping to bridge that gap.
Right.
And you said we have 4 of them. I think that number has grown over the years from what I understand, and just listening to their testimonials and some of the things that they do. I know I had spoken with one of them earlier this, I think it was in August or September, and they had shared with me that they had been at registration at the high school and helped, it was on a Saturday if I'm not mistaken, brought some families up there to help them register online and get everything sort of ready to go for the start of school, and just the gratitude that they, I think, felt and heard and saw from the families for doing that on a Saturday, that fit into the family schedules, and certainly then knowing that when school started, things were going to go really well with them for school and everything. So anything else from an EL program perspective? Maybe we want to talk about assessments. How do we measure the progress of our EL program, maybe even drilling down to each individual student?
Sure. So we spent most of yesterday working through this because it's a new area for both of us in our new roles. We talk about the MCA testing that we do with all students for grades 3 through the high school. And there's an additional state test, it's called the Access Test, that we give to EL students, where it measures language proficiency in speaking and reading and listening and writing. And we look at how much they're growing there, and then it helps us break down some specific skill needs for each of those students as well. And then that determines the level of service they get during the school year. It's an annual test, take it once a year. It determines the level of service they'll get the next year and how much of that service they get.
And it's also, we use that data for exiting criteria, because we have students that make enough progress that they don't necessarily need to be in the EL program every single day receiving services. So we can use that access data along with other things, but it tells us, how proficient are they with their speaking, in their writing, listening, and reading. So it's really nice to have that. And it's a good tool for us to use not only in the EL world with our EL teachers, but we can give that information to their regular classroom teacher, share it with everybody so everyone knows.
It helps the classroom teacher know what to expect from that student, to where they're at.
What they can do.
Right.
So it really drills down to the almost specific skill levels. Is that in those areas that you talked about, Jeremy?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if I'm a teacher and I get all of this data about an EL student, what do I do with it if I'm a regular, let's say I'm a third grade teacher or whatever, what do I do with all that data? How do I help really facilitate, I'm going to call it accelerated learning, because at times that's what it needs to be, accelerated learning for an EL student?
They have what are called, once we get the results, can-do descriptors. And it's what the student can do. So as a classroom teacher, I could look at that and see, okay, here's what this student can do, and then it gives me an idea of, wow, what do I need to do to accelerate them and move them forward.
And our teachers do a great job of using that data to meet the students where they're at and know how to challenge them and how to push them forward. So we're not providing instruction that's above their level or below their level, to really meet them right at the level they're at to help them grow.
Anything else that either of you would like to share about our EL program? Now that you've been involved with it for a few months, things you've learned, things our community might not know. Like I said, we have the privilege of working with things like our EL program and our EL staff and students and families often, but is there anything that our public might not know?
I would say our families, our EL families are such an asset to our community that I maybe didn't realize how much they are until I got in this position, in this role, and have gotten to know our parent-student connectors very well as many of the EL families. They are just such a great asset to the Marshall community and really do bring a lot to our school district. And it's neat to have that diversity and have our students exposed to it and the different cultures. The culture they bring is just amazing. We have a culture, we haven't talked about this, but a Culture United Club at the middle school and at the high school where our EL students are involved, and that's an after-school club or program. And then they can share their culture, in the club as well as in the community. Like the high school at the end of the school year in May does a big cultures fair where they can share everything about their culture and everyone can learn from their culture.
My experience, and I don't know if yours has paralleled this, but my experience with our EL families has been that they understand the importance of education and that they really want their children to be like everybody else and to be successful in school. Is that sort of what you've seen with your interactions as well?
Absolutely. All parents want the same things for their kids, the same things that we're here to do. We're trying to prepare them to be, we've mentioned earlier, college and career ready. When they leave high school, be prepared for whatever the next path in life is. And that's all parents want the same thing, whether you speak the language and are able to communicate that yourself or not. So it's providing those supports and getting those kids to the spot they're ready for wherever they're going after high school.
It was interesting when Commissioner Casilius was here recently and kind of spent time in our voluntary pre-kindergarten classrooms, and we had some EL parents who were there whose children had participated in those programs. One of the parents shared their story about being in almost an adult EL classroom where they brought their child to the school district. I think there was childcare provided, activities for the 3 or 4 year old, and then the family members were sort of involved in some English learning opportunities. Are either of you more familiar with that than?
Yep, that program, Tiffany Teskey, our early childhood coordinator, started the program, I'm not 2 or 3 years ago, I'm not sure on the exact number. And I wasn't aware of it either, and she shared it with me, and it's so great because they can offer the class. It's an ECFE class, but geared for our EL students and family members. And during the day, and they can come, and it's run like a regular ECFE class, but yet they have that language support. Our parent-student connectors are there to assist as needed. They do the same type of activities, the circle activities, that type of thing, but with the language support and having the connectors and doing that type of thing. And then when they bring out, or they pull the parents out, the kids, continue to do theirs. It's like an adult basic education course where they can give those families the skills they need answer questions, you know, anything like that. Because some of our families are coming and they've never seen snow. So just helping them, you know, to work through that, even that you need warm clothes in the winter, you know, anything like that. So it's really fun to see that, to even start building our program from our early childhood as well. Because we, you know, have a great program K-12, but starting to build that early childhood program is a great thing to see.
Would you, either or both of you, say that the language acquisition skills at the younger years is, I don't know if beneficial is the word I want to use, but more important than at the later years? If a student comes to us as a 5 or 6 year old and they don't speak any English, is the potential for them to learn English greater than if they come to us as a 16 or 17 year old?
Well, for any of us, learning a language younger is easier.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's when we're teaching those basic foundational skills. We're teaching all kids a lot of those skills in the classroom, and they're going to pick up on it quicker. You get to the high school level, and it's harder to learn because your mind is more set, and those connections are set differently, and so it's harder. But it's important that we can do it quicker then, because once a student's 21, they can't be in high school anymore. So it's, you know, the sooner we can start, the better, but we'll work with all kids that come.
And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that funding for an EL student, additional funding goes on for 7 years, if I understand. I think they made that change recently from 5 to 7, just kind of recognizing that it's going to take a while to get these students acclimated to the English language and hopefully proficient in everything. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't send a shout out to our EL teachers, our parent-student connectors. They certainly play vital roles in the success of our EL students and their families, but also our regular classroom teachers. I know that they work really hard to understand how they can do a better job and tailor their instruction, focusing on the standards, having the same level of expectations, using PSYOP strategies like you talked about, working with the EL teacher and other interventionists to help accelerate that student's learning. I feel confident saying that we would all agree that we have hardworking, dedicated, and caring staff who really want to do what's best for students and their families, and every opportunity that we have to say thank you to them and kudos for the great job that they do.
Absolutely.
Is really important, I think. So, any final thoughts before we wrap up, or?
No, I'm good.
Good to go?
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate both of you being here today and talking about our English Learner Program. If anybody has questions, whether that be an EL parent or someone from the community, you know, we didn't really touch on the number of volunteers that help out in our EL program and come in and assist with after-school program activities and even to sit and listen to students read and read with them. So if anybody has any questions, how should they go about getting more information?
You can call the district office and ask to speak with either one of us. It's 537-6924.
Awesome. Thank you very much for being here. Again, I'm Scott Munson, Superintendent in the Marshall Public School District. Pleased that Beth Ritter and Jeremy Williams were able to join me today for this episode. And like they said, if anybody has questions about our EL program or any other aspect of our school district, they can call the district office at 537-6924. Thank you very much.
Thank you.